Welcome back to our channel. Today we're going to start a series on basic endgame concepts in the king and pawn endgames. We are going to start off with key squares today. So in this video we're going to have a look at key squares for the pawn on the 2nd to 4th rank, key squares for the pawn on the 5th rank, 6th rank and 7th rank, and then we have the knight pawn on the 6th rank exception, rook pawn exception, and then we are going to finish off this video with an endgame study. So there's quite a lot to be done. We'll quickly go through them one by one. So the first one is pawn on the 2nd to the 4th rank. For the pawn on the 2nd to the 4th rank, the key squares are the same. So it's simply two squares in front of the pawn. So if the pawn is on f4, the key squares are obviously going to be e6, f6 and g6. So what it means by key squares is, here if the pawn is a white pawn, the white king should be able to come to one of these squares, and if the white is able to come to one of these squares, that means it's an automatic win because black cannot draw this position. So we'll start off with this. So white to move, king g6, white has come to the key square, so black can try king f8 and f5. Now remember, king f6 is also possible. This is called opposition. We will talk about opposition in more detail as well. So after king e8, it will be king g7, and as you can see, this pawn cannot be stopped. So going back to this position after f5, king e7, and now it's a pretty easy win because white is able to promote the pawn. Secondly, we're going to have a look at the pawn on the 5th rank, and for the key squares for the pawn on the 5th rank, here is shown. So it's any of these 6 squares. So as long as white is able to come to any of these 6 squares, white king, then this is a drawn endgame. So white to move, white starts off with king g6, king f8, king f6, and this is called opposition. After king g8, king e7. After king g7, now the pawn will promote automatically, and this is a winning endgame. Moving on to a pawn on the 6th rank, as you can see, it's similar to a pawn on the 5th rank. It's any of these 6 squares are considered key squares. However, it's white to move. So here, the king cannot make a move. So how can white win this position? It's called zugzwang. You simply have to play f7, and now black is in zugzwang. Zugzwang means black has to make a move, which is not ideal for them. After king e7, now king g7, because as you can see, the king has come to the key square, and now this is a winning endgame. Moving on to the pawn on the 7th rank, these are considered the key squares for the pawn on the 7th rank. So now it's black to move. Black comes forward to attack the pawn. White has come to the key square, and now it's a winning endgame. We'll move on to the exceptions now. So when you have a knight pawn on the 6th rank, these are the key squares. It also depends on the white king's position. For example, if the white king was on c6, the key squares are different. However, just because the white king is on c7, it's only these 4 squares are considered key squares. So white will actually draw this position if they push their pawn forward, because white king is unable to get into this key square. So how can white win this position? White has to win this position by playing king b6 first. After king b8, we have king a6, and after king c8, now king a7, and white king has come to one of these key squares which we had look. So after king c7, now when the pawn has been pushed to b6, the 6th rank, white king is in the key square, and this is a winning endgame for white. Moving on to the exception of the rook pawn, it's white to move here. Now black is trying to move the pawn to a1. White to move. So in this position, the key square, so actually black king has to come to any of these two key squares. So rook pawns are very limited. So that's why when you are trying to calculate and simplify positions, try to avoid a rook pawn, because it's very hard to promote them, especially when the opponent's king is close by. And it has very limited key squares as well, unlike the other pawns. So here, white to move, white can draw this position by playing king c2, And now all of a sudden black is unable to come to any of these two key squares. So we'll have a look. King a3, king c3, king a2. After king c2, black can try to push the pawn, but after king c1, black can either go away or play king a1. It really doesn't matter. This is a drawn endgame. As you can see, the main reason for white able to draw this position is simply because white was able to control these two key squares, and the rook pawns are very hard to convert. You need to really calculate them properly before simplifying any positions. Finally, we want to finish this video off with an endgame study. So we'll have to use all the concepts which we just went through to solve this endgame study. So now it's white to move. What is the correct move? The correct move, please pause this video first and do this example before going through the solutions. I hope you paused this video and had a go at it. So we'll go through the solution now. King f2 is the correct move. Now, the correct black can play h4, which is a tricky move. What happens if instead of h4, black plays king d7? If that's the case, king g3, king e6, king h4, king h5, and then here white takes the h5 pawn, and as you can see, this is a knight pawn. The key squares at the moment, because it's on the second rank, the key squares at the moment are this. However, white is controlling these key squares, and when the pawn comes up to the 6th rank, white should be able to control these key squares as well. So this is a winning endgame for white. You can actually do it for yourself. So going back to this position, now we'll go at h4. Now this is a very tricky move. What happens if white here plays king g3, trying to go around and try to win this pawn? If that's the case, this is the drawn endgame. Straight away, black can here play h3. White is forced to take this pawn. If they don't, black can actually either take the pawn or try to queen. So g takes h3, and all of a sudden, we had a knight pawn, and now it has become a rook pawn. And when a rook pawn, as we know, the key squares are limited in this instance. So we'll just have a look. Black here is able to come and control these two key squares, and white has no option. So that's why when you plan this out, you have to always think about key squares. Now king f2, h4, and king g1 here is the correct move. And after that, h3, should we actually take this pawn? We had a look. You cannot take this pawn. If you do, then the key squares are these, and black is able to control them very easily. It takes only 3 moves for them to control it. So the correct move here is g3. You have to have this as a knight pawn. And after king d7, here white can play king h2, king e6, king takes h3, and after king f5, we have king h4, and we have here king g6. Now this pawn, because it's a g3 pawn, the key squares are f5, g5, and h5. So here white can play king g4, and this is called opposition. We will look into opposition in more detail as a concept in the next video. So after king f6, we do have king h5, and white has come to the key squares, and this is a winning endgame. I hope you enjoyed this video. For more videos like this, please like and subscribe, and it's bye for now.